Welcome back. It's still Africa's finest breakfast show, New Day. And we did tell you that our second conversation had to do with development journalism. And we've got in the studio an ace and veteran uh, broadcaster in the person of Moji Makanjuola, who is also the executive director of International Society of Media in Public Health. Good morning.
Good morning.
Nice to have you join us.
Thank you. Good morning.
All right. For us to get a vivid picture as regards what we will be discussing today, looking at our development journalism, we have on the line from Lagos, columnist, talking about Lekon Sote, who will be giving us an intro into the discussion. Good morning, Lekon.
Good morning, Anthony. How are you today?
Fine. Thank you for joining us on New Day.
Okay, thank you for having me.
All right, I've got AMADI, my co-presenter, and Moji Makanjuola in the studios with us.
Good morning to you all.
Good morning.
All right, we'd love you to give us an intro as regards how you perceive development journalism.
Okay, for me to describe development journalism.
Yes.
Okay, well, to put it in a very short and non-technical language, is to say that this is communication from the media, specifically designed as a form of advocacy for social mobilization and to get the audience, that's the target audience, to, shall we say, alter their attitude and behavior towards a certain issue. For example, let's talk about family planning. If the press will write a story, showing the advantages of family planning, for example, we are already doing some what we call social marketing. I think that is essentially what it's all about. It's different from the regular news, which somebody has described as news events worth sharing. That is something that is, shall we say, of immediate value, something that is almost sensational, which we sell in the media generally.
All right.
Okay. Would you say we practice development journalism in Nigeria, the media in Nigeria? Do we practice enough of it?
The practice? Well, let me say that journalism teachers in Nigeria is almost a regular part of the diet of students. They teach you development communication. Now, what happens in the newsroom? Somebody once said that if your editor wants you to get a story, he can tell you, oh, go and push your cousin from the top of 25-story building so that you can create sensation. Meaning that there is sensationalism sells more than the regular news that we are talking about. But however, because there is need for development for growth, in the economy and social space, there is need to always make space for, shall we say, development journalism. The challenges, as I just said, is that does it sell very quickly? If you are going to write a story about, family planning, for example, unless somebody dies or something happens, something dramatic happens, a newspaper may not necessarily want to carry it. And don't forget, whatever is happening that is hot and new, like political news that is happening, maybe somebody is trying to indict the acting president, for example, it will likely sell. The editor will pick that one over a story that has to do with family planning, for example. So those are some of the challenges that stories like that have in the newsroom.
All right. What would be the best way for us to change this narrative?
Well, what some people do is, let me talk about some newsrooms. They have a desk for issues like this, health desk, women desk, and therefore the people, it's already happening in many newsrooms, either TV or radio or newspaper. They have health desk, for example. They have female desk. They have economic desk. So those people, they are already doing the job and they get their stories in. The idea is not to emphasize sensationalism, rather than something that will be of benefit to the generation. Don't forget that communication development actually is about improving the quality of life of the people. And that is very important. It's very key. And that's, if you ask me, it's a national security issue. And so the press must take it very, very seriously. To deliberately make room, create space, create time for such news, because it will help us to move forward.
Okay. Let's look at what's in your opinion, what would be the role of development journalism to the nation's development?
What should be the goal? Did you say?
The role.
The role.
Yes.
Oh, I've just said it. The role of development communication or journalism is to affect the attitude and behavior of the recipients, so that they can adopt new way of doing things and then improve the quality of their lives. I think that is essentially what it's all about. That is why communication scholars are concerned about communication journalism, development journalism.
All right, the final question will be, what would be your advice to editors in the various media firms as regards the how they could, in as much as, yes, we know the government issues at times seem to take
well,
precedence.
the Constitution says that the press has the job of, that's Section 22, that the media has the job of holding government accountable to the people.
Okay.
As a matter of fact, chapter 2 of the Nigerian Constitution is about fundamental objective principles. And that is where people who want to look at issues of communication and development, that is where they should look at. Satisfying those various aspects, educational, foreign policy, health, everything, the entire gamut, what is in chapter 2 of the Nigerian Constitution, that should be the focus of those who will deal with the issues of communication or journalism for development.
All right, we want to say a big thank you for joining us on New Day today, and thank you for your very, very constructive view.
Thank you very much, Anthony. And please say hello to Moji.
Thank you very much, too.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Okay, that has been the Punch correspondent talking about Lekon Sote, giving us his view as regards development journalism and its essence. Now, let's get back to the main story.
Okay.
Nice to have you once again.
Same here.
All right, being an ace, a veteran journalist, broadcast journalist, what would you say is the best way we could really change the attitude and mindset of Nigerian journalists from the brown envelope, from government and elitist focused stories?
Well, thank you very much. Well, it's sad that we keep referring to the brown envelope issue. I think we should just put it at the background.
Can we actually
pretend,
do that?
Yes, and pretend it doesn't happen. But I want to say that journalists, pre-independence, post-independence, have always been in the forefront of national development in Nigeria and in most developing countries. And that's one of the theories of development journalism, the fact that journalists have been in the forefront. We were there when Nigeria wanted independence. We, post-independence, and for any policy of government, the bus stop or where people get information is the media. So we have become an imperative for development. But how we have been able to fashion it, how each media house has been able to strengthen development journalism is another case to study. But essentially, I would say that I believe in development journalism. I even got a new word for development journalism one of these days when I went on advocacy to one of the media houses, and they say that it should be called solution journalism. Solution journalism. And yes, and I said, okay, this is a case to discuss. But again, there are dangers in development journalism. You now become, you could just find yourself to be used. So you have to, there's a slim line, you have to be very careful. I was reading through when I was, doing a bit of research on development journalism, and they said that there are about 3 theories to it. The authoritative theory, which is if a development journalist and you work with a government or in a public media house, there's the possibility that you get subsumed in saying things only about government. And sometimes this might not be absolutely true. So you find out that you cannot investigate a lot of your stories. You just come up with he said, I said, and it's all premised on development journalism. That's one theory. There's the other theory of liberal development journalists. That is, you say it all. You advocate that you can work within the ambit of free speech for everyone, and then so that way you are conversing that nobody is putting a gun to your head as to this is what to write, this is what to say for us on broadcast journalists who are broadcast journalists. Then again, there's the one, the social corporate responsibility, and that's the one I go for. And I want to give kudos to Nigerian journalists that we have done very, very well. We have been able to change policies of government, or at least let government know that whatever policies you are bringing in, that particular one does not augur well for Nigerians. We have been able to investigate. Let's say, I've reported a lot of my practice life. I've reported health.
Okay.
And I know that the health correspondents in Nigeria, I could say about 65% of us, and I say this with every iota of humility, have been very concerned in ensuring, in being part of a development of healthcare delivery service in Nigeria. I'll take the case of polio.
Okay.
Polio came on, and there were all kinds of theories. Some media houses went on and followed those who distracted us that the polio vaccine was unsafe for our children. But there was also the school of some journalists, which I thank God I belong to, who believe that if the vaccine is the same that is used for children all over the world, why would they make special vaccines for Nigerians? And that those vaccines have been... So I had to do a bit of science. And the government of the day at that time, President Olusegun Obasanjo, now said, okay, if Nigerians are skeptical about the use of the vaccine, let's go to all the countries in the world where vaccines are produced. And I was given the opportunity, a very rare opportunity, to be on that trip. And we went we're in India, we were in South Africa, we were in Indonesia, where you have the largest number of Muslims, because apparently people from the north at that time were the ones who vehemently, didn't want their children to be administered with the vaccines.
Yeah.
But we went there. I went into the lab. And I would go independently to not the Nigerian scientists, that we went with, but to the other scientists that we are meeting. Please, I'm not a scientist, I'm a communicator, but I wanted to find out so that I'm reassured myself, and I don't get back to Nigeria and report, what is not there. And they took us through the line, they took us through the production line. The scientists were able to break down to me to say that, listen, the same vaccines that we use elsewhere in the world is the same vaccines that are used in Nigeria.
Yeah.
And, so for me, I begin now to report not just from the point of knowledge, but from a conviction that when this vaccine is administered, our children will not be made sterile, as some of the people who didn't support the polio vaccine. So a lot of things that we've done. Look at Ebola. the Nigerian journalists were in the forefront. Look at family planning, for example. It's so controversial, and I'm happy that Punch colleague mentioned it. It's so controversial. People believe that, oh, family planning, they want to reduce the population of Nigeria. No, we're saying that. I mean, the people who know better than us are saying that if you space the time for which a woman bears, her children, she will live longer, she will live healthier, and she'll be able to look after the children. We're saying that young children, young girls who are not matured should not be allowed to get pregnant, because a lot of them die in the process of pregnancy. Some of them even die because they don't want the pregnancies, an unwanted pregnancy. Instead of preventing the pregnancy, they actually go to quacks, and we know the result. So the Nigerian journalists have been in the forefront of social responsibility, and when you talk of development journalism, but I do know that sometimes we get carried away. You get carried away and you forget the ethics of the profession. For us, we are to inform. We are to be somebody who is not biased, so that you can put the facts together and people can actually pick from the facts. We are said to be the eye and the ear of the society, but what are we doing with that? Sometimes we don't even know how strong and how powerful the pen is. So even with your iPad, I like to romance my pen, because I know it's mightier than the sword. Okay. Yes. So there are pitfalls here and there, but overall, it's something that we need, because we're in a society where you can't have it all. So information has become, it has become the norm for us, and information beyond what government said, but what you can do to improve your well-being, what you can contribute to the country, not so much for what the country can do for you. And the weapon to do this is development journalism, and I think it's the way to go.
Okay. Now, in your opinion, what are those things that we are still doing wrong as journalists, as media houses owners, as editors in newsrooms? What are those things that we are doing wrong? Can you pinpoint those things?
Well, I wouldn't say the things that we're doing wrong, but I just say that the things that we haven't really come to terms with. Okay. We, if you're doing an investigation, for example, on let's say, I was reading up here of a journalist who is a development journalist, who was doing a story on child labor. And you know what's just struck him was that he found out that underage children were, in traffic, clean up the screen of the vehicle. Yes, and he was shocked at an ungodly time. What are these children doing? And that sparked off an investigation in his country, and that investigation brought about people now to see that a policy was put in place so that children are not abused and children are in all the time, and it got the front page. But if that story had been put in page 27 or page 18 and in a little tiny corner, the respite that came for children would never have been. So we find out that developmental stories take the background, and especially in these days of commercialization.
Yes.
Most media houses, particularly broadcast media houses, we've gone commercial.
I want to go for those stories that will bring in
money. Yes. So those programs too. I mean, things like that, commercial news, commercial feature. I think that we should start thinking, because we have our own peculiarity as a country, and I think we should start addressing some of these issues. You pay for that, you pay for this, and so who is paying? Whoever is paying dictates the tune. So you got to produce what the person wants. So that's another area to look at. Then 4, it doesn't have to be sensational, but it can be developmental. But we want 10 people died from Ebola or Lassa fever is killing, that would make. But when we say that 10 people who had contracted Ebola, God forbid, have survived, it will be in page 10. It will not, yes, it will not, you won't see it on the first page. Somebody who's done something that can stimulate development, can stimulate governance, good governance, that can stimulate well-being, doesn't get that front page.
Yeah.
But if you say a whistleblower, ha, it will take the first
covers
part.
the
Yes,
first
the
bit.
first part. So we are still seen as a country in development. So I think we should.
Okay,
Yes.
with what you just said,
Yes.
what roles could international organizations like the United Nations Population Agency
Yes.
and the people, the citizenry, do you think there's need to probably reorientate their mindset as
Yeah.
regards what kind of news they should be interested in? Probably that will also help when the journalists out there put up this very developmental stories.
Yes. Well, I think that we can work. We can collaborate with some of the international agencies,
Okay.
but we should also look inwards, because what sells or what makes news or what draws attention in Nigeria is not necessarily what would draw attention in a place like England, for example. And so I always say that we should work within the context of our own peculiarity.
Okay.
But I must say here that particularly the UN agencies and you just mentioned the UNFPA have been very, very supportive in passing on information. We can't say the information we need is just what we have in Nigeria. We also must be global in our outlook, and they say that a journalist must be very diversified. You must know it all.
Yeah.
And so they have been to our rescue, bringing us to terms with what happens globally, so that we can use that as a benchmark in writing our stories. But having said that, we must also look at the way we do things and enrich those things that we do. Bad cultural practices should be reported, but the good ones should also be given, should be highlighted. And that's what I love about India. They haven't lost the sense of who they are. Once you see an Indian, you know he's an Indian.
Yeah.
You know what he's wearing. But we have become so westernized. And so we need what we get from the international community, but we also have to have our homegrown way of doing things. So that is the only one that is sustainable, because the dynamics of the world is not static.
Yeah.
New things are coming up every day. But what makes you different is the Nigerian in you, and is the way you carry on. So we must be able to have this mixed bag and carry on with our work, and so that when you see a Nigerian journalist, you know that this journalist is a Nigerian, and you're speaking from the point of knowledge. It's not about Nigerian journalist. Oh, he said, he asserted, he continued, he added. No, we should be more creative.
Yeah. Okay. What would you say about us doing real investigative journalism? Because I think in Nigeria here, there's a point whereby you can want to say a story about something, and then you're afraid that you might be picked up or something. So what would you really say about that? How deep can we go?
You can go as deep as you can until you get to the bottom of it. I don't think we should be afraid. I mean, once you cut out, every job has its own risk, and we are always at risk, and it's not peculiar to us. I think it's your commitment and your conviction that this is what I want to do, and you get to the bottom of it. And that's why most times our stories don't fly, because we just report it for one day. We don't follow up.
Yeah.
We need to follow up stories. At a point in this country, I was just known as Moji the polio reporter. Yeah, you know. But for me, I knew I was doing a service. I'm a mother, and well, even if my kids, had grown up at that point and they wouldn't need the immunization, but I was looking forward to be a grandmother. And what will happen to my grandchildren if we do not get to the bottom of the polio vaccine controversy at that time.
Yeah.
So we must always put a human face into what we do. Sometimes we are too technical. I want us to be professional, but we are humans after all. And I mean, if God has endowed us with this special, because I keep saying to people, listen, journalism is a special trade. Because you now become a doctor overnight, you become an engineer, you're an accountant, everything, and you need to break it down for people to understand what you're saying. And I think that even us haven't done ourselves any justice. We carry on as if we are beggars. We're not.
Yeah.
I say to my principals that I'm ultimate, because you go to an inaugural lecture and the man delivers 100-page, 50-page lecture, and your editor says, give me 1 minute.
From that.
Or give me 1 minute, 30 seconds, and give me a sound bite.
Right.
Yeah.
It just takes a special person like the journalist
Yeah.
to be able to break it down and give you 1 minute, 30 seconds, and it will make sense.
All right, I love where you've gone to. It leads me to the next question.
Okay.
With this, why is it that the journalist is not being really appreciated, especially by technically the employees?
I mean, it just breaks my heart. And, sometimes when I meet some of my colleagues and they say, we haven't been paid for 9 months, we haven't been paid for 3 months. I didn't go through that orientation. Maybe because I worked on TV. I'm still working on TV. but I think it's unfair for any employer to not pay for job done. And this has given rise to all kinds of journalism, You invite journalists to events when we should hold up our heads and let them know that we're ultimate. And journalists are still hanging around after an event. And they're asking for, what? We need transport. Each time I hear that, it just breaks my heart. Because you won't find, you don't get that in any other part of the world that I have been. You don't see journalists hanging around after an event.
Yeah.
It's so typically African, it's so typically Nigerian, and it just saddens me. And, well, I'm here. You did say to me in your invitation that you transmit to 54 countries.
52 countries.
50, how many?
52 countries.
52 countries.
Yeah.
And mostly African countries?
African, Europe, South.
Yes,
Asia.
I just want to use this medium to plead that we need to give dignity to this profession. We need, and giving dignity to this profession means that if you must employ people, you've got to pay them. So that gives rise to us asking, before you set up a TV station, for example, TV station is so capital intensive.
Yeah.
And it doesn't bring your profit like yesterday, like you go to the market, you buy this mug for 2 naira and you want to sell it for 3 naira. No, it doesn't happen like that, in broadcast or in journalism. But, people just see you. I hear that some people will just give you your midgets. Look, this is your salary. Go and make money for yourself. How? So if you're not interested in giving dignity to the profession, please don't start. And for those who already have opened up, I'd just like to plead that you make this job, dignify this job, for crying out loud. I as long as I live, I don't know any other business outside this. So I want to be dignified. I don't want to, when they say, these press boys, I get so angry. But it's because we have been subjected to that level.
Yes.
Nobody treats us with respect. And we are not even helping ourselves. Some of these so-called brown envelope are so insulting.
Yeah.
I can imagine you've gone to school, you're going to write, and somebody puts some, pittance of 2,000 naira in your envelope. Yes, it happens. And then and you take it, and you know, I don't know. I think that we have to do a rethink. I think we need to have a national, a national conference to speak to the fact that Nigerian journalists are tired of being disrespected. I've met some of my colleagues who are, who you call us veterans, and I said to them that we must do something. Look, if you have the calling, for crying out loud, do it with pride. This brown envelope, when you're on your own, will not dignify you. But if you can close your eyes sometimes to this brown envelope, a browner envelope that is more sustainable with a whole lot of respect will come. I know it's difficult because you have bills to pay, you have but all the same, let's dignify the profession. Let's
And then still attached to this.
Yes.
Still attached. You talked about commitment earlier. If you're in this job, you have to be committed. You want to do what you have to do. Be willing to take risks. But in Nigeria, whereby you know that if something happens to me today, there's no provision for my family. No one's going to take care of my family. Yes, there's no insurance, nothing.
That's it.
It won't motivate you to want to do anything. Let me just give the story, and then I don't have to go deeper. I don't have to take any risks.
I know, but tell me, living at all is a risk. That we're up today and we can speak to the rest of the world doesn't make us special. It's the grace of God, that has given us life, that we are able to do what we are in a society, and I get extremely frightened that people are not even ready to take any risk. And life is a risk. Every day of your life is a risk. You might just get out there and somebody, some drunkard hits you on the road. Some crazy person might just decide to want to use his gun as a toy. Things are happening. So every day of our lives we are living, there's a measure of risk out there. But if you choose to be a journalist, please be a good one.
All right, my final question
Yes.
would be, how can we send this message of development journalism to the schools and civil societies and like the international Society for Media and Public Health? What roles can they also play in trying to push this message to ensure that we have a total turnaround by the journalists in Nigeria?
What we're doing from my own NGO, the International Society of Media and Public Health, is to kind of set an agenda for reorientation. And I'm happy that one of you here has been on one of the capacity building workshop that we have embarked upon. And we intend to take this around the country. And we're doing it on every strata of health development, so that people can come to, we can see our own responsibilities as media and be able to chip in our own whatever we can do as partner with the health sector. But beyond that, I think that for us journalists, we have become extremely docile, and I think you're lucky because we have all these gadgets that we can learn things online. We just sit with our degrees in mass communication. We don't want to do any other thing. I have been fortunate enough to have done a fellowship in public health, albeit sponsored by the Centers for Disease Control in America. But there are opportunities there. I know journalists who have, not left what they're doing, but added to their knowledge by going to study a bit on, let's say public health, because we are relevant there, and every other thing. We don't seek knowledge, And that's why when you go to assignments, you find journalists, please let me get a copy of his speech. Please, we can't do this. We can't write the story if you don't get the copy of the speech. I think that's a lazy reporter because you should be taking down notes. Yes. So you can't be self-sufficient. You must also strive to improve yourself. And beyond that, our employers too must strive to train us, train us every day, because the world is not stagnant. Things are improving. The cameras that I started with in NTA at that time is not the same camera we use today. We are talking about digitalizing, and so we can't sit and rest on our oars. I want to say that it's a two-way thing. The journalist, as an individual, has a role to play in improving himself. The employers too have their own roles to play in ensuring that we meet global best practice. Having put all this together, we also need to respect ourselves. I mean, we should be able to, honestly, I want to go back to that. We should be able to call the bluff of whoever invites us and say, listen, I'm not going to be part of your very insulting brown envelope, and be able to do the job. And I just want to appeal to editors that when reporters come in, let's try, and you can, as an editor, you should improve the copy to make it newsworthy, and not just throw it in the bin, because it does not happen. but I must say that we're doing a great job as journalists, particularly in Nigeria, and maybe say that, listen, if the heavens fall, it will fall on everyone. Nobody will sieve the journalist out. So we have a duty to inform, educate, as well as entertain, and most importantly, promote the great strength in being a Nigerian out there.
All right. I think well said. We want to say a big thank you for joining us on Africa's Finest Breakfast Show. And we've been talking development journalism, looking at all angles of it. And we had in the studio Ismph, veteran broadcaster, and also the executive director of International Society of Media in Public Health, talking about Moji, Makanjuola in the studios. And we've obviously learned a lot, and we did also get the views of the Punch columnist, talking about Lekon Shoti, who indeed started the whole conversation with his point of view as regards development journalism. We'll be going for a quick break. When we come back, New Day, we'll definitely be wrapping up.